Hey guys, we're live. Welcome to the show tonight. We are joined by Frank and we're joined by Drew. Now we're going to be talking about Civil War, World War One, World War Two, whatever happens. So we'll let it fill up a little bit, and you just want to introduce yourselves. We'll let it fill up.
There we are. Okay. I was trying to get it to come in on my end so I could watch the comments and stuff.
Yeah, I just minimized that so I can see the comments.
I am going to share. I'm going to share this the new on my Twitter.
Well, Chris kind of. I'm going to share it out on Facebook. Chris kind of chuckled earlier because I was sitting here and I said, Frank asked me, he said, "Can you do you recognize this uniform?" And I leaned way in. I'm like, if I can see, and Chris kind of chuckled when I did it. He doesn't realize I've got a 36-inch monitor up here right now. My eyes are so bad that I can't see squat.
Here we go.
You need one of these
when I reenact.
Good afternoon.
Yeah,
Anna. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Amy. Hello, Skinner.
Right, so I'll let it fill up a wee minute or two, just till it gets to like 10 and that, because then if we start talking and then we miss a bit, So we'll let it for 5 minutes. Frank's dressed up as one of the Home Guard, aren't you, Frank? Look at this.
Yeah, if you remember Dad's Army, boys and girls,
Big bubbles.
You remember Captain Mannering and Corporal Jones, and coming from Cleveland, Ohio, we didn't have Dad's Army growing up in the mid-'70s, but my friend Michael McNeil, who is a Anglophile, told me about Dad's Army, and as soon as I watched it, I fell in love. So I thought, that's what I'd like to do. So here I have a uniform. I'm actually the Royal West Kent Regiment, which was Dad's Army, and that's how I started doing British reenacting as a Yank in the United States.
And I must say, look at Drew. He looks the part, doesn't he? He's got his hat on, he's got his cigar.
I don't have a uniform on because I have to do my stream in an hour and a half. So I'm dressed already for my stream, and we have some Civil War reenactors. We have some World War I, World War II. I mostly do Civil War cowboy. I do a little bit of French and Indian War, American Revolution, 1812. I even go as far back as Culloden era. So
Hatchy. So we've got 9 people in the chat. Shall we start? Let's talk about Civil War first. I'll bring up a place, and you can we'll talk about Gettysburg again, the famous place that you like to talk about. Why don't you tell us a wee bit about that, Drew, and about the carnage and the death and all that, because the subscribers like that kind of thing.
The carnage and the death at Gettysburg? Oh, Lord. Yeah. Gettysburg was the 3-day battle. It went from July 1st to July 3rd. And you figure 55,000 dead. It took them months. I mean, long after the war had moved on out of Gettysburg, they were still trying to dispose of the bodies. They were still trying to clean up. And still to this day, people don't realize that the battlefield at Gettysburg was almost 17 square miles.
That's actually when you think about it.
If you sit and think about it, it really honestly is. And, people don't realize that even still today, on occasion, when
We lost Frank. He'll be back now, probably.
Frank?
Frank.
People don't realize today that some people actually dig foundations to build houses or garages or put in pools, and they find things from Gettysburg still buried.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was just, it was And I mean, it was constant fighting. It was one military maneuver after another. It was. It's
You're
terrible.
back, Frank.
There he is.
You're back, Frank.
I'm sorry. I tried to click on private chat, and it knocked me out of the ballpark.
Oh, that'll be fine. That'll be fine.
Here's the story
see in Gettysburg.
of a man named
Gettysburg. See in Gettysburg, did they ever find any buried stuff like cannons and muskets and God knows what? Does anybody actually uncover this stuff?
Oh yeah, they found all kinds of stuff in Gettysburg. When they went cleaning up that town, the townspeople were the ones who were forced to clean up and dispose of everything. And you figure in July and August in Pennsylvania, it's 80, 90 degrees. You've got all these bodies laying around, horses, you have people. The whole place reeked of death and decomposure.
Yeah.
And it literally took months to make it not smell like death and decomposure. They were piling horses up all over town, just burning them. They were trying to take care of the bodies properly and either put them in the ground or send them home. It was terrible.
That's actually quite.
And
if you think about it, Oh, there you go. There's one of the Confederacy phoning them now.
Okay, hold on. I've only got one side of my headphones working and the phone's ringing over here. So it's okay. Now I can hear you.
That's fine. But I was going to say there about that war. I mean, you think I watched something on the TV the other night? Maybe you can help me with this. And it was where the soldiers were brought in. There was a big, massive pile outside the hospital, and it was legs and arms. Where people have just been getting. People obviously, what you call it, chopped off because in the days they couldn't really, they didn't know that much about medical. That nowadays, legs and arms would have been fixed.
Oh,
but how many people
most
died?
Definitely.
How many people died in total, in both sides?
Yeah, at Gettysburg.
Yes, I think it means Gettysburg.
Gettysburg.
Yeah, it was right at 55,000 that died in 3 days at Gettysburg.
They see between 30 and 70,000. When you're thinking after the battle, people who survived the battle but died shortly thereafter of wounds, and some of them died after the war of wounds. It could have been as high as 75,000, but there's no way for them to know. There's no way for them to know.
That is just that. Can you imagine that? I mean, 3 days after 3 days, there's say 60,000 people dead.
Yeah, somebody died somebody got hit with a bullet every 5 seconds in 3 days.
That's actually, and I take it, Frank. Drew. See the guns behind you. Would any of the guns have been used in the battle itself?
Yes, I don't. Go ahead.
These back here, like I was saying earlier, this one here is your standard Second Army Remington 44 caliber. This one here was the Navy 36 caliber. They were both used during that time period. Few of your soldiers actually had these, the lever action rifles.
That was
they really changed the war. Yeah, because instead of it taking 20 seconds to reload your single shot musket or your rifled musket, this one here, you just click, boom, click, click, boom, click, click, boom, click.
Amazing.
So, I mean, you were firing off 15 shots in the time it took these guys to fire once and reload.
Of course, it's quite interesting because I've got to jump to Frank now, because in World War I, they would have used basically that same rifle, wouldn't they?
Oh, yes. During World War I, the British, the Americans used the 1903 Springfield rifle. Mm-hmm. That was a bolt-action rifle that was extremely accurate. Yes. 1903 or 03A3 Springfield. Mm-hmm. It was an early rifle that took a metallic cartridge. The early ones had black powder, but it wasn't the same as modern black powder. It wasn't quite as strong. and also the metallurgy wasn't quite as good. They were still figuring that out. The later ones, the 03A3, redid those, so the tempering would be a little bit better. The British, of course, had the Enfield rifle. They had Mark I Enfield. They had those from 1911, and the French, had a similar rifle. The Germans also had the Mauser, so they basically used bolt-action rifles at that time. I can get one for you if you want in a moment. Here, want me to go get one? Hold on, I'll be right back.
There's a question for you, Drew, from Hatchy. Drew, tell me, how do the Confederates feel about the Yankees in the Federal Reserve today? One feels there may be another bullets flying.
Everybody now in America has given some thought to another civil war. But it's not going to be a separation of states. If you do, it would actually be neighbor against neighbor. Ever since the election kind of went through and passed without incident, people aren't worried as much about it anymore, but they're still worried about America changing. And especially now, groups like, Black Lives Matters and stuff that are trying to, dispose of the history, and they basically want to erase it. There's a lot of people out there that don't want it erased, because regardless of whether it was good or bad, it was still our history. That's like Scotland. That's like the people of Scotland saying, well, the British beat us at Culloden. Why have we got monuments and stuff out there? Just tear it all down and make it a field or something, because they won, and that's something we don't want to remember. We don't want to remember the winning. You can't change history.
That's exactly. You can't
change history.
No.
Nobody's invented a time machine. There's no way to go back and stop the battle from happening.
But there you go.
But no, it's not really. It's not really the Confederates not liking Yankees, or the Yankees not liking the Confederates anymore. It's a matter of everybody's worried now what the future holds.
I don't think there'll be another civil war, but I do think the world it's in a state where there might be another world war, and that's what might happen. But I must say, Frank, look at that, Drew. Isn't that a nice gun?
This one's a Canadian-made one in Long Branch. I have also a version that was made in Lithgow, Australia, as well as BMW made in Great Britain. I also have an American one that was Lend-Lease made by Savage Arms. And one of our Canadian friends was coming to the United States doing a reenactment at D-Day Conneaut, and he was turned back at the border. He said, you can't bring that weapon in the U.S. Because why not? Because it was spinning up U.S. property on it. I said, well, he said this was Lend-Lease from the Second World War. He said, it's still, well, he got mad and went home. But this one here took a British 303. They were extremely accurate. You can see this has the elevation on there.
That's basic, isn't it?
So they trained on these constantly. The British were better with a bolt-action rifle. The Germans thought they had semi-auto rifles, because they would be like, they go as fast. They could go so fast, like rapid fire. They were so good at that the Germans thought that they were against people who are fighting with semi-auto repeating rifles. That's how good the British were. They trained that good. This gun was invented by an American, but he couldn't get the patent on it, so he went to England. The M1 Garand, it was the other way around. And we ended up getting the patent, so it's kind of strange how that worked. the right place at the right time or the wrong place at the wrong time. So you learn a little bit about history. And
what size of round does that take? What size?
Hmm?
What size of round?
This is 303.
Right.
303.
Yeah.
Very hot round. It kicks like a mule, though. I mean, I fired it all day long. We had 1942 dated ammo. And here I am with my buddy, Bill Pecor, at a Civil War encampment. And it was the 4th of July. And he said, Frank, I know you're into World War II as well, too. He goes, how do you like to shoot off some? I've got a couple of Enfields right out of the box. I just cleaned the cosmeting off. I got a couple cases of British World War II ammo. You want to give it a try? So we shot original ammo all night long. And my shoulder was pretty sore at the end of that. Imagine what the soldiers were like. But this is what the British carried in the Second World War, and a similar version in the First World War. I have one in the closet or whatever, but it's dated 1911. So they had Mark 1, 2, 3, 4, and I think Mark 5. And they had many variations. So the Brits were constantly upgrading, improving. They just didn't say, we're going to stick with this. They kept, they had a good system, but they kept improving it all the time. And some of these in the South Pacific Islands of Fiji and parts of India, they have Enfields that were made in Ishapur Arsenal, the Ishapur Arsenal of India, and they are in, I believe they're in 308, and they're still in use somewhere. I was in Fiji Island a couple of years ago, and there were gentlemen who were guarding some installations there, and I happened to be able to see them. And they were older gentlemen wearing the suva, which is the police garb. They were in former British barracks, and they were armed with an Enfield.
It's a beautiful gun. See, the Germans, did they use the same one? Because I can remember the Germans had the bolt action too.
The Germans had a Mauser. I don't have any Mausers. I wasn't lucky enough to pick one up during the war.
I think they're worth a lot of money. I think the Germans.
Yeah, that was a good trade. The Mauser has one of the strongest.
You guys can have your modern guns.
Yeah. Well, this gun's about 80 years. This gun here is dated 1941.
Wow.
And some of them,
still too new.
To you, they're modern.
Yeah.
That's because my favorite gun to shoot will always be the Brown Bess. Britain's own Brown Bess. One of the best shooting guns ever made still today.
I would take out my Brown Bess, but it's all apart right now. It's in the process of being cleaned right now. It's going to be perfect in a week or so.
Here, Drew, have you got a Brown Bess you can show us?
I'll bring it next time.
No, I don't.
Oh,
I used to have a Brown Bess, and I was actually up in Canada. 20 years ago. I was doing the Battle of Thames up in Ontario, and I found a Tower pistol. Had the same lock mechanism, trigger mechanism. It was all Tower of London pieces, and it was also the same caliber as my Bess. So here I was walking around with a matching set of Brown Bess and Tower pistol, and somebody walked up to me and said, "Oh my God, are those for sale?" I mean, I had just bought the pistol, and they offered me $1,000 for the set, and I walked them straight back to camp, and he counted out 10 $100 bills for me, and I said goodbye to my my Brown Bess, and I've never been able to find another one.
Look at Frank.
And still to this day, yeah, I know Frank's got 97 different hats stuck back somewhere.
You never know when a movie comes up. You never know when a movie comes up. I actually helped Tom Koba, my friend, was doing a movie, and I actually brought in enough stuff, and I rented it out to him so he could use it in the making of some of his movies.
Amazing.
So I made some money off of it.
Honestly, I think you should open your own museum, Frank. You should open your own museum.
Every reenactor has stuff like this. Aren't I right, Drew? Every reenactor, we all
I don't have as much as you, but yeah.
Well, you, I blew a lot of money. I made money and I blew it. What can I tell you? But these things, I think I paid $60 for. I think they're going for $400 now or more, U.S. 400, 500. I've seen them at the shows. I wouldn't pay that in any way, shape, or form.
But there's people.
But I paid about $65, $70. That's what they were a few years back.
Yeah.
So, Drew, what's the oldest gun you have? The oldest one?
The oldest actual gun I have is this one right here.
I was looking at
this
that.
Is an 8. It's a double barrel shotgun. It is an 1880 Gold Hibbard 12 gauge.
Wow.
And I still shoot it today.
It's a nice.
That's the actual.
Is it a double barrel?
She's nice.
Double barrel.
Double barrel.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, double barrel, side by side. It's a beautiful shooting gun. Beautiful shooting gun. It's got double trigger, one right back behind the other. So I mean, you could put a finger on each trigger and just dung dung, kick the barrel open, pop them out, reload it, dung dung, and just keep doing it.
Here a question for you, Bethy's. It's something I don't see much. See the Enfield? Is that the one that goes pum 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 pum, and then it goes ping? What one is that? Is that the Enfield?
That one is called the M1 Garand. I will show you one. One moment, please. They call that the ping because it took a stripper clip, and you'd load the stripper clip, and you had to be careful because they had the M1 Garand thumb. New recruits who were not used to it would put their thumb in and not get it out in time, and the bolt would come by and mash their thumb. And after doing that a couple of times, it could probably break your thumb if you have it in the wrong position. They didn't forget, but they knew how to use this gun in and out. Let me show you that in a moment here.
I think Drew's sitting there thinking, my God, I wish God had his guns.
Like I said, to me, his guns and the time periods that he does are very interesting. That's never been my cup of tea. So I'm into the old, single shot guns or the flintlocks or the percussions. This one here, it came out. It came out in 1861. Yeah. And like I said, this one here is 1880, and then these both came out right around 1859, 1860. But when it comes to newer guns, I just have never. That's like, to me, using newer guns is like modern camping. I can't get a taste for it. I need a canvas tent.
Exactly.
Right now, I'm. One of my big.
What's that, man?
One of my. I was just saying, like right now, one of the big things I collect for on my channel, because I like having. Hey, Greenie. I like to look the part when I'm out doing something like that. And I do a lot of long-term events. Sometimes I do events that are up to 2 weeks long. And so, like right now I'm in the process of getting the funds up to build an actual log cabin on a trailer that I can move to different places, and I just put these panels down over the wheels and stuff like that, pull the steps, and I can walk right up into my log cabin. And you camp there, or if I want to go hunting in the wintertime or something like that, I can roll it out somewhere, put it down, start a fire in the stove in the inside of it, and camp in it. But
that's a great idea.
Like Frank, there he is. Different uniform change again.
I'm a tech sergeant with the Hell on Wheels. There you go. That's a mechanized division. Here's my, this is what I used for World War II. You can see it says U.S.
I suppose there'll be a unique number in that. You'll be able to trace it back to the original person in the army.
Yeah. This is my pride and joy here. This is my M1 Garand. This is the American battle rifle of the Second World War. This one was made in November of 1943, and it is made by Remington, I believe. This is a Remington manufacturer, and it's hold on a second. Sorry. So you can see over here is where you'd put the stripper clips. You'd have the bolt open and you'd push down, and then you'd get your finger out of the way, and it was locked. So it had an internal box magazine in here that was inside here. You didn't have to load it from the bottom here. So once you were loaded, you had 10 shots. After the final shot, it would kick out the stripper clip, and you hear a ping. The Germans would listen for that, or the Japanese, and then they would come in. So some soldiers would have a gun with one round in it.
Oh, to trick them.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as they heard that ping, the enemy would attack. It was over for them.
It's a nice rifle, that, isn't it? I mean, look at that. Look at
it. I have something Frank have.
What have you?
This is the M1 Garand.
For all my Scottish friends.
Ooh.
Oh, nice. Isn't that Dutch, I believe? Is it Dutch?
No, this was Scottish made in the village of Doon.
Ooh.
That's why they're called Doon pistols.
Doon.
A blacksmith made one of these one time in the village of Doon, and one of the heads of a clan came riding through one time to get his horse reshod, and this was hanging on the wall in the blacksmith shop because it's all steel, it's all metal.
Yeah.
And he wanted to see it. The guy showed him the Doon pistol, and he was very impressed by it. Not only the fact that it fired really well, but with this cute little apparatus down here on the bottom of it, it made a heck of a skullcracker too.
I bet.
So he ordered them for his clan. He ordered them for his clan, and that's where the Scottish Doon pistol comes from. Legend has it was a Scottish Doon pistol that fired the shot heard around the world that started the American Revolution.
Yes, and if you get hit with that, you're doomed.
Sorry. You're doomed. That's right.
But we'll say, Frank, that gun you've got is very nice. I like the varnished wood. And yours, Drew. Awesome. See, this is the thing about the UK. You can't have anything like that.
We lose veterans every minute. While the show started, I don't know how many veterans we've lost in the Second World War.
You can't, because I reserved a smoking room. Indiana, you can't have your kids if you have a smoking room.
Okay, that's fine.
I know, but I'm sad, and I wanted her to get it too. I just wanted her to get a break.
So what's that you're saying, Frank? So, there?
Maybe next month, me and her will go.
We're losing veterans.
Yes.
Since this show started, probably worldwide, I'd say probably 30 or 40 or 50. Someday, like the Civil War, there are no more. The last World War I veteran died recently. I think he was a Frenchman, and they're all gone. My grandfather was in the First World War, and he went to Camp Humphreys, Virginia, and he showed me the bayonet drill. Oh, incidentally, here's the bayonet that goes with the Garand.
I was just about to ask about the bayonet, sir.
Here's the M1 Garand bayonet.
Wow. Imagine being stuck with that.
Yeah. So this would be mounted like that. I'll show you. These were cut down in the middle of the war because the World War I ones, were very, very long.
Yeah.
So they cut them down. In the Navy, they actually used smaller ones, so they cut the top, they cut this part off, and they put it in their belt
Yes.
so they could carry it as a utility knife.
Did they not
So,
used to?
we do a lot of personal things like that. It's not stock. It's stuff that they used to do that the soldiers would remember.
Mhm.
We learned that not in history books, but from the veterans themselves
Yes.
who are still around.
We can't forget the veterans, you know, even although they don't really teach it at school anymore, and even although that I own the TV, you get loads of war films all the time. But the younger generation is needing to learn more about this stuff. I've seen a lot of films where they use the bayonet to actually dig a hole for like a trench. Because I've
Yes.
seen that.
One of the biggest problems is, and I can't speak for the UK, I can't speak for Europe at all, but one of the biggest problems here in America is they're doing everything in their power to keep the violence of war away from kids. And
Yes.
perfect example, and I always fall back on this, and Frank's probably heard this story through the reenacting grapevine, but we had a reenacting boy here in America like 4 or 5 years ago. You're not allowed to play with the artillery units, the cannons, or anything until you hit 10 years of age. And he finally turned 10 years old, and he was his dad's artillery unit let him be the powder monkey. He got to get the charge out of the artillery case and walk it up the cannon, and he'd place it in the barrel of the cannon, and then the guys would ram it, and they'd stick the fuse in, and they'd fire. Well, he did 10 reenactments that summer. He turned 10 years old. He was so happy when he went to school. They told all the kids, okay, we want you to write a story of what you did this summer.
Mm-hmm.
And he wrote about reenacting this battle and reenacting that battle, and this many people died at this battle, and this many people died at this battle, and I got to be a powder monkey with the artillery unit and shoot a cannon. And when this kid submitted this thing, it was 12 pages long. When he got it back after it was graded, it looked like a Roswell dossier. There was more black marker on it than there was words, where they marked out all the words he couldn't say in a school paper. And that kid was completely heartbroken. He didn't even want to go back out the next year and do reenactments. He was so ashamed. They shamed him so badly in school because he talked about all this stuff. He was ready to go back out. That's what our education system is turning into.
Exactly.
And like I said, I can't speak for Scotland or England. I don't know how they teach Culloden, or how they teach the Jacobite uprising, or the Bonnie Prince coming back, or Queen Mary,
really
or Wallace.
That's the thing. See, that's the thing. I don't think they teach it anymore here. I think that they'll maybe show a little bit of like World War II or maybe World War One, but that's it. That's it. I mean, it's
and it's sad because my family came from Scotland. My family was originally the family that held Eilean Castle.
Yes.
When we got that castle from the McGregors, way back in like the 16th century, I'm blood McRae, and my family had nothing to do with Wallace. We did fight for Queen Mary.
Yes.
Our family split during Culloden, half of us for Jacobite, half of us for Hanoverian. But I had to study all that stuff on my own.
I know.
And if history's really, really important to people, that's what they have to do. They have to study the stuff on their own.
See what?
Because they're not going to learn it in school.
I used to play a lot of games like the Xbox, right? And maybe 10 years ago, you would buy like a World War II game and it would have the swatch sticker. It would have all the kind of things, right? I bought a World War II game just a couple of weeks ago, right? Do you know it's a World War II game? You're fighting the Germans, right? See the flag? No swatch sticker. Nothing. It just says Germany. It says on the arm, German. It doesn't even have the swatch sticker. I mean, what is the point? You know,
I put a post on Facebook that history, every country has a history that they're not proud of or proud of, and you can't ignore what happened and say it never happened. You know, reenactors say, we have a saying that if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it, right, Drew? And so we try to have an unvarnished, that's all what Drew's show is all about. Unvarnished, not BS, just straight out, and like it or not, take it or leave it. This is how it is.
People laugh at me all the time, but I tell them if you want an unbiased, no fluff, no filler, no BS look at history. That's what you're going to get on my channel. I don't care if they demonetize me. I don't care if they block me. But you want to know? You mentioned this. You mentioned the swastika. Mm-hmm. Now everybody knows the swastika. I'm not going to draw one because they'll probably block the stream. But it always comes from the right and goes down and goes up and goes in that direction. So it's turning clockwise. Do you know they found pictures of Sioux teepees in America?
Yeah, but because it's a piece of
dating.
It's actually, yeah.
It actually means that's the only thing Hitler had right. It means the four corners. But it originally went the other way. It didn't go, it didn't point this direction, it pointed that direction for the four corners. But they found that symbol on Sioux teepees that were around 100 years before the Second World War.
The Egyptians used that as well, too. The Egyptians used it. The Native Americans used it. Everybody used it. It was a symbol of well-being, good luck, fertility of all corners. And Hitler, like many despots, used something and they warp it to get followers and make it think it's something it's not. Same with the Confederate flag. But behind Drew, he's showing the Bonnie Blue. Most Confederate soldiers fought under that flag, the Bonnie Blue flag.
Exactly.
That bears a single star. Now, the one that we see as the stars and bars, that's St. Andrew's Cross.
Right,
St. Andrew's Cross is similar to the British flag. You see, right.
Yep.
Now, those two things
a lot of people
that's St. Andrew's Cross.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. A lot of people don't realize that battle flag right there was created by a guy of Scottish heritage because he remembered back when the St. Andrew's Cross meant victory and independence.
And the way skinheads and neo-Nazis and people fly that around today, that's not the original meaning of that. Those stars were the 13 original or 12 or 13 original Confederate states. That is a symbol of the Confederate States of America. And, like it or not, Hollywood has turned it into, and modern America has turned it into something very sinister and nasty, that it really, the original meaning was just, it represented their flag, not what people think it does today. And so, of course, most people see that and they think of, all the negativity.
You've got to remember, Tate, the world's governments, they like to twist things and make things up just to suit them. You know what I'm trying to say? If they don't want you hanging about Hitler or that, they will change things, and they shouldn't. See, the younger generation, they should learn about what our family members did for them. I mean, good God, there's people died. I mean, how many people died in World War I? What, in the first couple of weeks, Frank? How many died?
I don't know, but it was a bloodbath. It was a bloodbath. I mean, it was a killer It was a killer thing. World War I started long before the United States got involved,
That's right.
and same with World War II as well too. Like
That's right.
Winston Churchill saying, "Hey, if you don't jump in now," a lot of Americans kind of like didn't tell the truth. They enlisted in the Air Force as Canadians, and they fought in the Battle of Britain, and that helped them turn the tide. They fought as Canadian pilots because they had some skill behind them. They said, "Okay, I can't get in this way. I'm going to get in one way or the other." You know, our brothers need help over there,
Exactly.
and so we officially weren't in there. So they figured a way around it. But I really don't know. I can't remember I could look it up if you want. I don't know some people know these right off the bat. I'm not.
I think the good to remember World War One. It was still commanded by generals that used to think riding into battle on the back of horses was a good way to fight. But they had tanks and they had planes and these things were old. I mean, they don't use horses anymore in the military, didn't they? No, I've seen them at Buckingham Palace or something like that riding about them, but they don't use horses for war. You know what I'm trying to say?
It seems to me that some governments rule by bullying people. Yeah. They start off with kids and they have a hard life and they survive it, but they don't forget the brutality of their childhood, and it carries into adulthood. And when it happens over a certain amount of people, it seems like human beings are always trying to take advantage of the underdog or someone else in one way or the other. So they adopt all kinds of slogans and sayings and things to get people behind them. And some of it's good. I mean, some of it is honest and true. And Frank Capra had the Why We Fight series. We were fighting against tyranny, and they wanted the American public and anybody to see that, to know, why are we fighting? Why are we enlisting? What's the reason? And it was a wonderful movie. I had a teacher in high school by the name of Mr. Chortis, and he was an excellent. I'm 63 years old. He's still teaching as a substitute for his son at Orange High School, who's a history teacher, and God bless him. And he made history, and Coach Stedman from Mayfield High School, where I graduated in 75. And they were wonderful teachers. We watched that whole series, and we saw the goose stepping, and we saw everything. And the German people, they're not bad people. What happened is they had leaders that led them astray. Same thing with Mussolini. He led them astray. And some of them were, Vichy France. The French are not bad, but their leaders led them astray. And they were collaborating.
When I was in high school, I asked my history teacher when we were studying World War II, I said, now, we were in America were guilty of some atrocity during the war too. Do you honestly think if Hitler would have been an Allied, they would have considered him a hero, or the villain they consider him today? And he, they would have considered him a hero.
Yeah, they would have.
And also, you notice,
I have your stats for you, by the way. World War I. The total was right about 40 million dead or injured. It was in between 15 and 22 million deaths and 23 million wounded military.
That's just shocking.
That changed the face of Europe and the world forever. All those people could have made inventions to cure certain things, inventions that we'll never know because they didn't survive.
You think of the Jews that exterminated, the inventions they could have made, poets and musicians and scientists, and it's terrible, absolutely diabolical. What was that you've got to say, Drew?
A lot of people think that reenactors are glorifying war. We don't glorify war, do we? We tell the sacrifices that people made and why they did that. Yeah. So people could learn and make their own decisions up as to what happened or how they feel about things. Yeah. But we're not here to push war or glorify war or murder or killing or anything. Nothing like that at all. We're historians.
What a lot of people have to realize, I was what they call a rendezvouser before I become a reenactor. I never done military. I always done civilian, either a trapper, or something, a diplomat. I When I reenact, I got into reenacting to keep that spirit, that pioneering spirit alive. And I'm not just a warm spring, summer, and fall month camper.
Mhm.
One of the really nice things about being a reenactor is they do winter events
Yes, I've
that
seen that.
people will still come out and see because they want to see what life was like during January or February or something like that, how their forefathers or their ancestors had to live. And I enjoy doing winter events.
Yes.
I enjoy just going out and camping, and that's one thing that I was going to say before we started the live stream. I was going to let Chris know about because it's really been a while since him and I have had a chance to talk. But this last year, I have been building a brand new persona. And a lot of people in the UK know of this gentleman because he toured Europe for several years. And that's a man named William F. Buffalo Bill Cody.
Yeah, I've heard of him. Yeah.
He brought
As
Buffalo Bills Wide West all over England. He performed for the King. He performed for the Queen. He was in France. He was in Germany. He was in Spain.
Yep.
All over, and then came back
seen
here.
I've seen the movie about him. I mean, I'm just going to jump really back to the Civil War again really quickly. You talk about people being one-sided, right? See, because the Union won the Civil War, right? No, it wasn't the Union. It was the Union. Sorry, got mixed up. They won. They only really teach the Union side, and a lot of people don't realise that. People in the chat don't realise, some of them do it and some of them do maybe, that everyone thinks that the Civil War was fought over slavery, but it wasn't. It wasn't.
That was part of
Slavery
it, but
did
not
not.
the whole story.
Yeah.
Yes,
That was
Well,
part of
see,
it.
slavery did not
it's a
become an
terrible thing.
issue until
Yes,
almost a year and a half after the war started.
exactly.
That's the whole thing. Slavery was
Slavery
not a
was
huge
part of it.
issue.
States' rights were part of it, and money was a big part of it.
Yep.
If they had
Money was
slaves,
a huge
that was cheap labor, free labor.
Yes.
That's what it
money
was
was a
about.
huge part of it because if you think about it, you had all of your product. You had your cotton and your tobacco and everything growing in the southern states. Well, the northern states had all the industry to process it and do things with it. This is why England got involved
Yeah.
after the Civil War started,
Exactly.
because England would get they would get their ships to come into Virginia.
Yes.
They'd pick up all this finished product, go back to England, and they'd pick up guns and uniforms and stuff there,
Exactly.
go down to the Bahamas, and then go up to the Gulf of Mexico, and they'd drop off uniforms and pick up cotton and tobacco. And they go back to the Bahamas and shoot back up to England, and then come to Virginia again with blue uniforms and guns and stuff. And they'd pick up finished product, go back to England, back to the Bahamas, back, and they just did this great big J for the entire 4.5 years of the war. They just kept doing it. England, Civil War almost became a world war because of England's love of getting into things, and then France wanted to get involved too.
Good God,
Well,
England was. Oh, sorry.
England processed most of the cotton, most of the world's cotton, and they got the raw cotton from the South. So they were kind of holding back for a brief moment to see. And they sold weapons to both sides. The Enfield, a P-53 Enfield, .577 caliber, the Confederates had to contract for every blessed gun, but they couldn't get the payment through the blockade, the Anaconda Plan. So they actually tried to get it through. John Hunt Morgan tried to get it through Cleveland, Lake Erie, through up to Canada and off the St. Lawrence Seaway, but they couldn't do it. So a lot of them went to the Union.
Morgan never made
to the
it that far.
Confederacy. Yeah.
Sadly enough,
They had the money.
Morgan
They had the money, but they couldn't get it out.
Yep.
It's like
Sure enough.
I have noticed that the Civil War, right? I've watched a lot of stuff in the Civil War, but I've noticed that they tend to exaggerate about the Confederacy. They tell porkies. They say it was slavery. They say it was all this. But as you say, it wasn't until later on in the war. That's the thing about things. It's because we bet the Germans. We go and wear about us being who we are and how bad they were. The Germans were really, really bad people. And what they done to the Jews and the Russian soldiers take, because that's what a lot of people don't realise. The Germans didn't just gas Jews. They gassed anybody that was disabled.
They disabled homosexuals, Jews, blacks, anyone who was different. Now, we have a saying here in America, and you guys may have the saying over there as well. History is told by the victors.
Exactly.
Now, we have a common belief here that if you want to get the whole story, you got to talk to the losers as well.
Exactly.
So, and
everyone loses in a war, even the winners.
Everybody, you're right. Even everyone loses in a war. But I must say, Frank,
I always tell people he does look really good in that, don't he?
It looks like, who's that guy who used to live with the bear? The American TV series, he lived with a bear.
Grizzly Adams.
Grizzly Adams, what's missing is a beard.
I've actually been putting Grizzly Adams series back on my channel. I found the whole series of it. So once a week, I'm putting a new Grizzly Adams episode on my channel.
I'll need to watch that because I like Grizzly Adams. I'll watch that. But I must say, Frank, what you dressed as tonight.
It's history.
It's
really our good. History. It's everyone's history. This is what we're here. That's why Drew's show is called History Comes Alive. I'd rather be a living historian than a deceased historian. But we speak for those who can't speak.
Exactly.
Yep.
Don't forget the lessons. My father told me, son, you'll never live long enough to make all the mistakes there are. You might not survive some of your mistakes. So learn from the mistakes of others. You do that. Learn from the mistakes of others. You don't have to jump off a cliff and land and find out it's not going to be a good idea. You don't have to do that. Yeah. Avoid them. That's why we study history, and it's a lot of fun. I've made friends that I'll have for the rest of my life. And we're a family. We take care of each other when we're away from home. We feed each other. We clothe each other. We give somebody a place to sleep. Drew does that. We have extra gear for somebody who wants to give it a try. It's a very family-oriented thing. So we're not, there are kooks everywhere you go. And if everybody's watching this, I understand, and I agree with you. But we try to weed them out. There's always some people who have hate in their heart, or they have an ulterior motive. That goes with anything. But we've tried to figure out who these people are, because we're not here to be nuts or anything like that. We're here to just show what history is and to infect people with a love of history. When I was in high school, I was looking at my thumb in the back of your head and the clock on the wall and thinking about what I was going to eat for supper and thinking about dog whiskers. And I'd look outside the window again and I'd look at the teacher and I'd nod, that's real interesting. And my mind was 100 million miles away because I just wasn't focused on something that people who looked and acted differently and memorizing all these dates and everything. I had enough headache with biology and all that stuff. And
Frank, you just brought up a very, very good point. You brought up a very good point. 5 years after I got out of high school, I was sitting back and I was doing a War 1812 reenactment. America's second run-in with the British. And my history teacher come walking through. And he nodded at me and he stopped. He turned around and he called me by name. And I said, "Yep, Mr. Bennett, it's me." And he sat down and he goes, "I thought you hated history." I said, "And I just hated yours." I said, there was only so much you could teach us, but there was always more to the story that you couldn't.
Yes.
I said, so those of us who loved history and knew that there was more to it could always go to the library or something and find a book. And then thank God the internet came out. You've got 100 million libraries right there that is just a away.
Yeah.
And, you know, believe it or not, he and I sat there for 3 hours that day. And by the time we got done, he said, "My God, man, you have reminded me of shit I forgot because I couldn't teach it anymore."
Exactly.
He says, "I am so proud of you." He says, "You have reminded me of shit I learned in school that I forgot because I wasn't allowed to teach it anymore."
But can you imagine a world without history? History's teached us things. I mean, yes, we had Hiroshima, right, with the Japanese, the nuclear bombs, but because of that, it's not really ever happened again, and hopefully it will never happen again, because people know what that can do, what it done to those people in Japan.
Imagine 1,000 years ago. Where were your ancestors? Where were your ancestors? Where were mine? 2,000 years ago. What were they doing? 2,000 years ago. They were somewhere doing something. That was a part of history.
2,000 years ago, my ancestors were pigs.
Okay.
We're in Scotland, Ireland, and England.
People who take care of their family, your grandmother, your grandfather, your uncle, the nurse, poor people, they're my heroes. Those are my heroes.
Exactly.
People who nobody ever knows their name. Those are my heroes.
Yep.
But you've got to think about this too. Can you imagine in 1,000 years from now, right, if we're still here, we've not blown ourselves up, somebody will be looking back to history at this time. You know, maybe this video will still be out there in the infinite of the internet, whatever that's like. You know, and they'll see you, Frank, dressed in all your gear and all your different things. They'll say, "Oh, that was World War II or World War One, wasn't it? That was 900 years ago."
Well, I started out doing Civil War, and I really messed myself up. My wallet from buying all this, and you know, I had Civil War down. I had whiskers. You couldn't tell me from the real fella. I had people who were reenacting for years, and they said, "Where the hell did you come from?" I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You're scaring me. You're just like, I mean, you're speaking the dialect so well. The general public, they say, 'How did you get here?' I said, by train. I said, by the rails, by car." I said, "A car? Yeah, narrow gauge." "What do you mean narrow gauge?" I read enough diaries that I was actually speaking the words they used, and nobody understood them. So I finally thought, I have to stop doing this. They think I'm kooky, and they don't understand it. But people who really studied it, they said, "Wow." And I said, "I guess I have to stop doing this because I'm too authentic. When I'm dying in the battlefield, I'm scaring people because I'm screaming for my mother. I said my leg and all this stuff." And some people didn't know if I was acting too good, and they couldn't tell if I was faking it or not. I said, "Well, I better knock it off." But I just wanted to be as authentic as I thought I could.
Exactly.
To do them justice. And I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know. It's only our own interpretation.
You talk the part, you act the part, you sleep the part, you eat the part. So when people come out and visit, they actually see firsthand as close a representation as you can give them to what life was really like.
Exactly.
And I mean, you want to light a spark I mean, that's in the end, that's our purpose, is not just telling the truth about what happened at this time or that time, or this battle or that battle, but you want to actually light a spark in somebody that
Well, that's what I was
that they're
just
going
about
to
to
go
say.
home and they're going to get online and they're going to say, "Oh my God, he told me
You
this and
think,
this, but look at this and this."
yeah, but that's what I'm saying. You think of the reenactments you've went to, Drew, the ones that you've went to, Frank, right? Maybe there's been a wee boy there, right, or a wee girl or whatever, and they thought, look at him. He's like a Civil War soldier. Look at his gun and all that, and they've got interested in that. They've went home and they started to learn all this, and knew, for all you know, they could have a job in a school teaching history just because of
Well,
you.
I became a teacher. I was
Yeah.
a substitute teacher, and I taught American history, world history, ancient Greek history. I found out I'm a descendant of Charlemagne on my mother's side. I'm actually 50% Southern Europe, probably 4,000 years ago from Turkey, and then they moved to Greece from the city of Arta, and then they moved to the northeastern Italy, Sicily. The other side, I'm 17% Midlands, England, 17% Dutch, 13% Germanic Europe, and 3 or 4% Danish or Scandinavian or something like that. So I've got, somebody said, you have the map of Europe written all over your face. I said, gee, I better take a bath. But, I try to get people, think of your family, your parents, your history, get involved, go sit down and ask your grandma or your grandpa, your aunts or uncles, what did they do?
I actually
Find out
traced,
about your own family if you can.
yeah, I actually traced my father's father back, and he came from France. And he's actually, I found out I've got a crest. I've actually got a crest for the name, my family name. And they fled France in the, what do you call it, the revolution. And the King of England gave them land here because they were friends with the royal family here. And throughout the years, obviously, things happen, they lose money and that. But that just shows you, I managed to find that out. It makes you wonder, who was my ancestors all that long time, about 1,000 years ago? What were
They
they
were
doing?
somewhere.
Now
They were doing something.
was that during the time of King Henry in France?
It would be the time of the French Revolution. It would be the French Revolution, and the king in Britain, well, England, basically says, well, because he was a nobleman, because if he stood in France, he would have lost his head. And in the France, he came to England, and the king's like, I tell you what, I'll give you some land, and they gave him some land, and I managed to trace that all the way back. My other side of the family was very interesting. I've managed to trace my mother's mother all the way back to the. You ever heard of the Clan Greg? And her father's father was actually friends with the guy that invented paraffin. A doctor guy, I can't
Wow.
remember his name. And you see what I'm trying to say? It goes all the way back. It's interesting. See history. That's why I do a lot of research. I like researching things.
A
That's
lot of the history wasn't written down. Poor people don't write down history. They try to survive from day to day.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yes, because that's what people
And
don't realise. There was no antibiotics and stuff.
one thing about being a historian, one thing about being a reenactor, you have to learn that there is a time for being that, and there's a time just to be a person. I am so proud of my Scottish heritage. I never allowed myself to ever become a fan of Outlander.
Yeah.
Because Diana Gabaldon did not write history, she wrote fiction.
Exactly.
You never seen a McGregor that they did not have at least two McRaes with them. If you look up the history of the McRae clan, they were the male shirt of the Mackenzies and the McGregors.
It's the same.
You
out here,
never
right?
seen one or the other without having two McRaes with them. They were the guardians of them, and that's why they were given Eileen Donnan Castle, because of years of loyal service and guardianship of the kings of Scotland. You never heard McRae in a single episode of Outlander.
See, but that's the thing over here, right? Everybody believes the movies and all that thing. You have William Wallace, right? Let's take William Wallace. Everybody thinks he was this tall chap.
Let's take William Wallace, but let's throw that other guy out in the ocean.
Hi, I mean, William Wallace, right? Everybody thinks he looked like the guy that played him in the movie. He looked nothing like him. He actually had dark skin, and people don't realize
dark skin, a very long, shaggy beard.
Yes.
I mean, he was a very, from what I understand doing the reading, he was a very pronounced, very well-built man. He wasn't this little scrawny guy that wore a kilt and bared his arse on the battlefield. Yeah. Half the time they'd go into battle with nothing on. They didn't care. But you know, that was an old Pick thing anyway. Go show up on the battlefield buck naked and scare the hell out of your opponent like you're some kind of demon or something. But you know, with him being in the movie, you know, he was raised up in the out country. He was poor. His uncle came in after his dad and brother were killed and adopted him and took him and you know, enriched his education and stuff. Yes. No, he was a very wealthy man. He was a very wealthy family. You guys in Scotland know that better than anything, because not only do you have the nice, big, huge monument of him, but you also got his family's original land marked out right there, where the walls were, where all the buildings were on their property. You know, he came from a very wealthy family. He was very intelligent. So
see, this is the thing. People believe movies. Some movies are all right. Some movies are correct, like Gettysburg, right? Some of that was correct, right? Obviously, they couldn't do the 17 miles with all the people, right? But a lot of movies I've seen about Scotland and their battles, it's just a load of rubbish. It's made up.
Now,
they exaggerate it.
One thing about Braveheart that I will say was pretty cool. When they show the Battle of Stirling, they show an open field.
Yes. Yes.
Well, for any of you that's been to Stirling, especially you guys in Scotland,
I've been.
You know the river comes down and it makes a little whoop around, and there's a little peninsula of land right here. Well, right over here is where the bridge used to be. So what they were doing is you had this bridge that was like 4 horses wide. So they were killing guys on the bridge, so everybody was having to thin into one line to pass by all the dead horses and stuff. So what they were doing is as soon as they would cross the bridge, they would push these guys into that peninsula where they had the river behind them and they had Wallace's army in front of them. And that's how they were slaughtering them so easy. They had no retreat. They had no place to run, so they had to fight. That's the only thing I liked about it, was they showed Stirling, the Battle of Stirling Bridge being fought in an open field, when it was an open field, but it was actually a peninsula where the Brits were stuck.
Exactly, and that's the thing. Everybody's got to realise that movies are not real. Yes, they might be telling the same story, but they exaggerate things. They've got to.
Movies are made for one reason. Movies are made for one reason, and that ratings. He's bloody changed his clothes again.
I know. Where does he get them all?
But no, movies are made to make money and to make good ratings. Exactly. And the more exciting you make them, the more money they make, because people don't only go see them once, but a lot of times they'll go back and see them 2 or 3 times. And then they'll rent them when they go to DVD and stuff. So let's take it's like I always say. You watch a movie about the Civil War. If you made a movie that went into every detail about the Civil War, this movie would have to be a month long.
No, mere.
So you cram 4 years into 2.5 hours, and you cut out as many little details as you can, and you just throw in the main facts. And sometimes the main facts just don't make sense without those little details. So
Exactly. Can I ask you a question, Drew? Did you share your link in the chat?
no,
You should share your link.
I
Share your
haven't.
link in the chat.
Well, how about if I share my link?
Just I'll just go to your channel and I'll download I'll just drop in the chat with Living History Comes Alive. There you go. I'll just drop it now for you. I'm just going to share.
Okay.
Copy link. You know, going live shortly in a little while.
Yeah, I've got about 5 more minutes that I can play. Then I have to get set up for my own show.
Well, I'm just going to be closing it anyway because we're at 1:10. This show tonight was only going to be for an hour and a bit. So, where's Frank? Ran away to Frank. Where are you?
He ran to change it. Frank.
Everybody, Frank.
He ran to see. I told you went to change his damn clothes again.
My God, man, we're just about to end the show in 5 minutes. Would you like to tell us about the uniform you've got on, Frank, before we go?
This uniform is a American Navy uniform from the Revolutionary period. Got pewter buttons, a lot of them. Here is the cuffs are like that. The got a pocket like this.
That's cool.
In the back.
That's cool. I see that, how it's all laced up. That's smart, that.
So my family, some of them were Canadian militiamen from Toronto. They fought in the War of 1812 under General Brock in the Battle of Queenston Heights.
I can do that too.
Oh, he's going for the hat now. He's going for the hat. Everybody's away for hat, guys. I've not got a hat. Wait, I know I don't know where my hat is. I don't know where I've put my hat.
To arms!
There you go, guys. I like to treat my subscribers to a treat, you know.
Wake up, ladies and gentlemen. Study your history.
Exactly.
Don't close that book. A shot that was heard around the world. Remember Andy Griffith inspiring Opie? You be inspired too.
Which Drew are we dressing up as? Well, we guess, are we dressing up in the same era of clothing as you? You look the part there, Frank. I must admit, you look the Frank. Oh, look, I feel out of place.
There you go, Drew. Guys. Similar thing. Yeah. Look at Drew's uniform. Isn't that beautiful?
That is. It's smart.
Well,
back then
you can put on your American Naval, and I'll put on my Lieutenant's Rogers Rangers.
Very good. Very good. And I even have there's my stuck a feather in my cap. And that's a turkey feather.
Macaroni.
That's macaroni right there, ladies and gentlemen. There it is. Macaroni.
I must admit, guys, it's been good doing the show tonight with you two because you two are awesome. We'll actually need to get you back sometime in a couple of, maybe 2 to 3 weeks' time. We'll get you back on for my subscribers. But honestly, just stay in the chat after I end this and I'll give you a quick chat before I go totally off. So, guys, thank you for coming tonight. And please visit Drew's channel, Living History Comes Alive. And Frank, let's salute him. You know, I don't know if I'm there right or no, but there we go. There we go. So catch you later, everybody, and please go to Drew's channel. Is live soon. When you're live, Drew?
About 15 minutes we'll be going live.
15 minutes.
See you there, Drew's folks. Follow us over there.
I'll be over too. Having a good watch. Catch you later, guys.
All right.
Bye.
You guys